one really has to wonder what agenda the media, mainstream, corporate, call it what you like, the majority of it, is actually pushing, and why. And who knew that in Australia we had so many experts on American politics? Hi, my name is Steve, and this is Christianity Out Loud's weekly word. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in wherever you may be doing so. Before we dive in, why don't you go and check out the website? That'll be linked below. That's christianityoutloud.com.au. That has got links to everything. It's got links to previous videos. It's got links to the social media that you can come and join me on. It's got links to merchandise. Got links to the book. Go and buy the book, Bread of Life, The Simple Gospel, looking at the I am statements in the Gospel of John. So you can go check that out as well. And before we go, why don't you hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the notification, do all of that. That way you'll catch every one of these videos when they drop. Aiming for weekly and going so far so good on that this year. So, diving into what I'm wanting to look at this week. The last few weeks I've been looking at the issue of abortion, and this is a hill that I am willing to die on, figuratively speaking, of course, but I am staunchly opposed to it. And I'm opposed to it for a number of reasons, not the least of which you're terminating a life. And I simply don't agree with the termination of a life, particularly a government-sanctioned termination of a life. And I hold that view consistently because I'm also opposed to the death penalty. Okay? So, it's not like I am for abortion and am against the death penalty, or I am pro-life, if you want to call it that, and pro-death penalty. I am pro-life in the sense that babies should be born and not killed. I'm anti-death penalty. I don't think that should be an appropriate consequence for an action. Now, we can debate that, but that's my stance. The overturning of Roe V Wade in the US by their Supreme Court has delivered up some interesting reactions, and I think, and I'll preface this by saying, I am also no expert on American politics, on American government, on their constitution, on anything like that. But I do know some things, some basic fundamental things, okay? This overturning has delivered up some fairly interesting reactions from both the US and abroad, or in Australia in this instance. The line I've heard is along the lines of, this is now a threat to our democracy. Point one, America is not a democracy. Might shock you, but they're not. They are a constitutional republic. There is more than a subtle difference between democratic government and government based on a constitutional republic. Okay? Democratic government, or democracy, let's use that term. Democracy is mob rule, basically. Not mob rule, but majority rule. Let's go with that. It's a little bit less harsh. Majority rule. Okay, so majority of people vote on something, and that is then the law of the land. Okay? Whereas a constitutional republic has a founding document that is the way that that country is governed, or the way it is set up. Okay, and there's several amendments to that constitution which allow for certain things, and it is the government's job then to ensure that the rights set out in the constitution are not infringed upon. Now, Roe v Wade. There is no constitutional protection or constitutional right for abortion. There wasn't. Okay? So what the Supreme Court did, in my opinion, was the right thing and go, it's not up to the Constitution, it's not a federal decision, it is a state-based decision. Now, this is where the whole point of the whole argument of it being a threat to our democracy is just an incoherent one, because in delivering the jurisdiction back to the state level, what that allows is state jurisdictions then to deliver the will of the constituents or the people living in those states. In other words, a democratic process. So if most people in the states want it a certain way, then that is what can happen. It can happen through the legislature at the state level. We've seen that take place. Okay, states that overwhelmingly don't agree with abortion, don't want it, have now banned it. States that do agree with it have gone the other extreme and will allow you to deliver your child and then kill it. That's not me being hyperbolic. That can happen in somewhere like Colorado, right? Or Queensland, but talking US for now. So the arguments coming from within the US are, to me, incoherent, particularly the pro-choice arguments. And again, because these very same people who will say my body, my choice, will turn around and agree with a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. So it's only my body, my choice for a medical reason when someone else agrees that it's my body, my choice for a medical reason. So, a bit ridiculous. But not to be left out, I have an article from the ABC, so that shouldn't be a real surprise as to the direction that the ABC leans. I'll give you a hint, it's very much not right, not right-leaning. Okay, very much goes the other way. Headline is, and again, links will be below, women who made abortion legal in Australia say now is the time for further reform. Okay, interesting headline to say the least. But the first sentence is this: the architects of the first law to decriminalise abortion in Australia say the overturning of Roe v Wade in the US was a huge setback for reproductive rights, and further changes are needed at home, as in Australia, to better enshrine access. Continuing on, Cheryl Davenport, who introduced the bill into Western Australia's upper house, carrying on a bit, says the overturning of Roe v Wade in the US was a terrible development. I just felt we'd gone back 50 years, she said. Yeah, well, you probably have gone back 50 years. Well, you haven't, but they have in the US, to it being a state-based issue. Now, either health is a state issue, a state jurisdiction, a state portfolio, or it's not. If it's not, then it can be federally enshrined. But it is, in which case it needs to be the states that make these decisions. Now that's very much the same here in Australia. Okay? We have states. States can make their own laws about certain things. And we see that with this issue of abortion. there are different laws in different states. Okay? In Queensland, I've said this before, our laws are abhorrent as far as I am concerned. If a baby is born alive during an abortion procedure, the baby is left to die. That is the instruction. The instruction is do not provide life-supporting treatment. Just let the kid die. That's Queensland. Okay? And that's perfectly acceptable in Queensland, apparently, because I don't hear a lot of noise from Christians about that law. It should be nice to hear more than one voice, being mine, change that. So, under Western Australian law, because this article from the ABC is looking at Western Australian law, under Western Australian law, a patient seeking an abortion must receive counselling about the medical risk of both termination and pregnancy from a second doctor who is not carrying out the procedure. Okay, in all other Australian jurisdictions, just one doctor is required. Okay, there's differences in the law. Funny how that works when you have states. Children under 16 years cannot access an abortion unless a custodial parent has been informed and given the opportunity to participate. That seems to me to be fair enough. Carrying on, former Labor MP or Member of Parliament Diana Warnock, who steered the historic 1998 bill through Western Australia's lower house, was, quote, absolutely horrified, end quote, by the US Supreme Court's decision on Roe V Wade. Carrying on quoting here, it was an outrage to me, as it will be to millions of women throughout the world. The panel, made up of people openly opposed to abortion because of their religion, should be able to make a decision about millions of other people, namely women. Namely women. See, here we go again. Namely women, and take them back not only to the 20th century, but to the 19th century, Ms. Warnock said. Well, I wouldn't want you to be too hyperbolic. I wouldn't want you to exaggerate too much, but back to the 19th century. All right. We're going that far back under these laws. I mean, just stop it. Just stop it. ABC, stop it. Diane Warnock, stop it. Cheryl Davenport, stop it. Just stop. You have no idea what you are talking about. Okay? Point one, because this is where we're at. I'm going to ask you all to define what a woman is, because I mentioned last week that in South Australia we've now got these over-the-phone abortion treatments, which is just, hey, marvels of modern technology. We can phone up and order abortion pills delivered to our front door for women and pregnant people. It's good news for women and pregnant people. I really, men can't get pregnant. I don't know. Why is that the controversial view to hold? But hey, since we're there, define woman for me. Let's hear it. Let's hear what is a woman. Let's hear it, please. Because if you're going to say these are women's rights, okay, what's a woman? Because the decision about millions of other people, namely women, it's women's rights you're supposed to be talking about here. Define a woman for me. Okay, question one. Or point one. Point two, you have no idea what you were talking about. Right? Women in the US can still access abortion treatment should they desire. It's not been federally outlawed. It is a state-based issue. Okay? If it becomes a state-based medical issue, it becomes no different to any other treatment that isn't available in certain areas. It's no different. Okay? I had a friend whose wife passed away last year due to brain cancer. Right? Had a brain tumour. Okay? On an inoperable part of her brainstem. And they travelled all the way to Mexico to receive treatment. Why? Because the treatment wasn't available here in Australia. How is this any different? How is that any different? If you are living in, I don't know, say Texas, which has got a heartbeat bill, as soon as the baby has a heartbeat, you cannot abort the child. I don't see what's wrong with that. If you're living in Texas and desperately want an abortion, you may have to travel, but you can still get one. Okay? It is just an further absolving one of personal responsibility and further example of the consumerist society. It's going, well, me, my rights, my rights, my rights. The third thing that this does is I would ask, what about personal responsibility? Okay? It is all well and good to have rights, but where are your responsibilities? Okay? I mentioned last week, I mentioned a few weeks, and there's not I didn't come up with this idea, so I don't claim any credit for it, but I am also pro-choice, if you wish to label me that. I am pro-abstinence. I am pro-marriage. I am pro-contraception. And I am pro-adoption. I am pro 4 choices. I am just not pro the 5th choice, which is killing the child. 4 out of 5. Okay? I am pro 80% of those choices. 4 out of 5. Okay? And the 4th point, argument, issue here that I have is that one of those people on the US Supreme Court who sided with the decision to overturn was a woman. So you bang on about women's rights, you bang on about reproductive rights, yet one of the people who voted to overturn this was a woman who is married with 7 children, some of whom she has adopted. So when you have a woman making a decision like this, does that not muddy the waters of the women's rights argument? I don't know, just putting that out there. But see, continuing with this, dishonesty and disingenuousness of our media here in Australia. Headline from, well, this particular one is from news.com.au. Channel 9 reporter Lana Murphy, sorry for offensive picture from abortion protest. Yet again, here in Australia, apparently people don't have jobs. They just go and protest, anything. Quoting from this article, Channel 9 reporter Lana Murphy has apologised after posting an image to her social media from last weekend's abortion protests in Sydney. Murphy was covering the pro-choice demonstration for the network and was pictured holding a sign that read, "Mary the Virgin should have had an abortion." So, you tell me with a straight face that Australian mainstream media has no problem with Christianity. Tell me that with a straight face, and I'll point to that article. reason I'll point to this article is because if I carry on, and she's since apologised, and as I mentioned on at least one of the social media sites, it would be remiss of me to offer forgiveness and redemption here. But I would suggest that there is no meaningful consequences for her actions here. But I digress. Quoting here, "In my role as a journalist, I always strive to remain impartial and respectful to either side of rational debate. On Saturday, while reporting on the pro-choice rally, I was photographed being passed a sign made by one of the attendees. The words on the sign and my subsequent posting of that image on my personal social media account has caused offence to some in the religious community. This was not my intention, and I wholeheartedly apologise to those that were hurt. I acknowledge that in my professional role, it was not the appropriate time to appear to have chosen any side." And Channel 9 then continued on to say that the journalist did not mean any offence, but is being counselled as to why it was not appropriate. Channel 9 apologises to anyone offended by the post. We respect all sides of this sensitive issue and pride ourselves on reporting with impartiality. Well, rather than just laugh at that statement, both of those statements, to that I would say, if it was not your intention to cause offence, what possibly was your intention of holding up a sign that said something like that? Because this is not a comedian making a statement, in which case I can go, yeah, okay, I consider that statement offensive, but I don't have to go and listen to that comedian or public speaker or anyone like that. This is from someone who is supposed to be an objective journalist. And it's also not like